Hello and welcome to Impact the Borough, the podcast from the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brent Christensen, President and CEO of the Chamber. Each week, we'll check in with our partners to share inspiring stories and important information from across the borough, highlighting what we're doing to start and grow businesses, create quality jobs, and develop our workforce. This podcast is brought to you by Truliant Federal Credit Union, a modern, mission-driven financial institution focused on the needs of its members, the businesses it serves, and our community. With 5 locations in Guilford County, including a dedicated commercial lending office at Friendly Center and a highly rated mobile banking app, Truliant makes it their business to help you grow yours. Visit Truliant.org for more information.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelli Frazier, the board president of Launch Greensboro. And for those of you that don't know, Launch Greensboro is the entrepreneurship initiative of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. We accelerate growth for entrepreneurs starting and growing businesses in the Greensboro Triad area by providing education, mentoring, and access to capital. And we do this through a variety of programs, including Launch Camp, Launch Lab 101, and Growth, our Sustain cohort support, which is essentially our alumni, Capital Connects, which is our version of our Super Bowl, our big pitch competition each year, and our first launch capital fund, pre-seed stage fund. So I'm really excited about this episode because we are going to be discussing business pivots, which to me has been in my life one of a key survival point is to be able to pivot both in business and in real life, but specifically in business. And whether that comes to a shift in strategy or changing core products or services or changing focus to something completely new and different. These are the kinds of things that I think are so interesting to talk about with entrepreneurs. So we have today 3 entrepreneurs who are going to share their own experiences with us about their business pivots, along with some really helpful advice. So let's meet these fabulous people. I would like to introduce you to Ciandress Jackson, Melissa Wallace, and Alisha Wielfaert. And I'm going to have each of you introduce yourself and just give us a brief overview of the work that you're currently doing, and then we will dive into business pivots. So Ciandress, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Ciandress Jackson. I'm the executive director and founder of the Be Great Foundation. And what we do is help children, teens, and young adults from marginalized backgrounds get into STEM careers through hands-on experiential learning, education, events, training, and we provide certifications for the young adults 18 to 25 to be able to get a launch pad into a STEM career.
Amazing. I'm very excited to hear your journey because I know that has evolved. So really excited to have you here. Next up, Melissa.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Wallace, and I'm the founder of SIPPIN SNAX Gourmet Bar Snacks. And while Ciandress is changing the world, I'm just trying to change some experiences one snack at a time. So SIPPIN SNAX takes our love for creating and entertaining and bring to market an authentic snack that's built for pairing with beer, wine, and cocktails. We're all about supporting the consumer's desire to snack well, snack thoughtfully, create memories, and most importantly, create great pairings. So we started our journey, which I guess we'll talk about with the pivot, a few years ago as a company called Hops and Nuts, bringing our experiences and our desire to snack well and have fun, working with brewers and vintners across the state and then throughout the country in creating authentically based snacks that make for great pairings. So we're excited to be here and kind of represent the CPG space.
Absolutely. I love it. And I love snacks. It's always snack time. Okay, Alisha.
Hi, I'm Alisha Wielfaert. I am the founder of Yoke and Abundance. It is a life coaching business. I work with creatives, makers, entrepreneurs who are going through any type of life transition. And gosh, aren't we all always in transition? And I also am the host of a podcast, the Wise Women podcast. And it's so funny because being on this podcast, I do this all the time, but you asked me to be on a podcast and all of a sudden my heart is racing like a crazy person. It's so fun to have the tables turned. I really appreciate it. But I also just published my first book, Little Failures, which is all about resilience and in some ways pivots, which I know we're going to be getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations. I'm excited to hear more. So let's hop into the topic of the day, which is pivots. Ciandress, we're going to start with you, just getting some background on what your original business was and what motivated your decision to make a pivot.
Absolutely. So my original business was in some ways completely different. I'm still working with families and children, but my original business was Chloe the Jumbo Jet. So Chloe the Jumbo Jet was a children's animation and book series. And the idea was to build a content and merchandise business based upon the idea of children's international travel and getting to, explore different places around the world, getting to learn about the history and the culture of the people that live in these various places around the world, and really develop compassion, empathy, and understanding for differences, right? And people who grow up unlike our own experiences. So that was the original business. I had a book series with about 7 books that were self-published. Also had several animation episodes and was looking to kind of get those sold to a bigger distributor or broadcaster. And the pivot really came from the business choosing itself, right? So I was actually running both the nonprofit and the Chloe the Jumbo Jet business at the same time. And I knew that I couldn't continue to divide my energy, my focus, my effort, my time, my money. So on the one hand, the only product that I really had that was, a product for sale was the children's books. And, in pure transparency and frankness, I wasn't selling a lot of those. I was spending a lot of time at schools, doing free events. I had this really cool Chloe the Jumbo Jet costume where we'd go out and get a bunch of kids together and we'd read the book and we talk about travel. And it was really fun, but I wasn't making any money. So it was more of a hobby than a business. And the nonprofit actually took off a whole lot quicker than I anticipated. I kind of put the idea out there. We started to have a couple of workshops. Our first workshop was a drone workshop actually in July of 2021. And the response was really overwhelming just in terms of the consumer base, the families that came to us wanting to really get their kids exposed to STEM, as well as the media attention that we got. So that's why I say, in essence, the proper business for me sort of chose itself.
It chose you. Yeah, it chose
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. It chose me. And so I'm running with that with Be Great Foundation.
Yeah, awesome. Making that transition, were there any new skills that you realized you needed, or things, I'm sure there are some that you have gained along the way?
Absolutely. So just going from running a for-profit business where I was in the driver's seat completely, to going to a nonprofit where you have to build a board and you have to engage your board, and really they're your bosses, right? Building something where you're putting your heart and your soul into it, and knowing at the end of the day that if you're not doing a good job, you can be dismissed from that leadership seat, is a humbling experience. So I would say just learning about the nonprofit world. I did have my first job out of college with the nonprofit, so it was great to circle back into that. But being in a leadership role where, I'm responsible for the finances of the organization, responsible for donor management. That's an area where I really didn't delve into before, responsible for writing grants. So just learning the whole nonprofit world was definitely a new skill that I had to develop and be able to sustain.
Absolutely. And will you just, before we move further, will you tell us a little bit more about the Be Great Foundation, like how it came to be? And
Sure.
obviously you gave us a little bit in the beginning, but will you just give us a little more background on that one?
Absolutely. So I have been in the IT world for about 15 years. And I noticed as a software consultant, so I worked for various software companies in the healthcare space, in the meeting and room management space. And I noticed that when I went into these spaces, there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. So I started to delve into why that was. And just recalling even my own experience graduating from University of Virginia. And I remember being in the library with my friends after we graduated, looking for jobs because we just didn't know what was available and what was out there. So the impetus for Be Great Foundation just came from wanting to expose kids from marginalized backgrounds, particularly to the opportunities that exist in the real, transparent, tangible careers that they can have that are within the realm of their interests, right? So if you like playing video games, you can be a game designer, you can be an esports broadcaster. So there's so many opportunities and possibilities that we just don't know until we get older and we say, oh, I probably could have studied this, or I could have done that when I could have been this when I grow up. So that's what we're looking to do. And that's the problem that we're endeavoring to solve with Be Great Foundation.
Amazing. Amazing. So a strategy that, a lot of people talk about when you're trying to figure out how to pivot effectively is not to just scrap everything you've done before and start over. How were you able to take some of the learnings and some of the work that you had done previously into the foundation?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest learning, and this actually came from Launch Greensboro. This is probably my fifth or sixth attempt at starting a business. I love a quote by Jay-Z where he says, I'm not a businessman, I am the business man. So the thought there is that any business can be successful or can be sustained as long as the entrepreneur that's at the forefront of the business is willing to put in the time, effort, energy. So with that being said, Launch Lab was really key in helping me to learn how to define who my customer is and how to target my messaging to that customer. I would say in my first 3 or 4 business attempts, I came up with the idea first and then tried to retrofit a customer to that idea. And I can tell you that does not work. Without customers, you don't have a business. So that was the biggest learning. And just sitting down before we even started Be Great Foundation, talking with kids, talking with families, talking with young adults, and understanding what their needs, motivations, and interests were, and then developing services around that, I think was the biggest thing that I carried over from Chloe the Jumbo Jet, as well as my experience with Launch Lab.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really great insight. I think a lot of times we get, as I would call you a serial entrepreneur. And I think often when that's our mindset, then we're constantly coming up with ideas for businesses that we can feel a passion for. And sometimes in that excitement, you get so excited that you forget to start with the need or the customer. And then you get down the road and you're like, whoa, 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 I have to dial back. So I think that's great insight. And for everyone listening, how can we learn more about you, stay in touch with you, and support you moving forward?
So you can find us at thebegreatfoundation.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram as Be Great Foundation NC. And we have a really big and fun event coming up on October 1st. It's our annual fundraiser. This is the second time that we've done it. This year is going to be a little bit different. We're going to feature an inclusive 5K walk. We'll have food trucks, we'll have vendors, we'll have drone demo, drone race, VR competition. We'll have a gaming tournament. So we're really, creating a big excitement around STEM. So we would love for your listeners to come out, support, have fun.
Where is this going to be?
This is going to be at Country Park, October 1st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Amazing. And do you register ahead of time?
Yes. Okay. You can register at victorylap5k.com.
Got it. I'm going to be there. That
awesome.
Sounds
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to Melissa, but we may be circling back with more questions for you, but thank you so much. Melissa, you're up next. Can you give us a background on your original business and then kind of tell us how that brought you to a place of pivot?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as I'd mentioned in the introduction, we formed a company about 6 years ago called Hops and Nuts, and it was born out of, launch Greensboro training and entrepreneur training. We talk about pain point. So, self-preservation, absolutely. We are big fans of all things that are liquid, and found ourselves in bottle shops or breweries or wineries having a great time and great experiences. And we looked around, there were no snacks. So
Mm.
self-preservation, those that know me and love me know that I don't like to stop having a great time. So self-preservation, we created some snacks that pair well with the genres within craft beer and wine and cocktails. And so our business model for this particular company was working really one-on-one with tap rooms, with tasting rooms, working with brewers and vintners, discussing, authentic flavors and what was their mindset and what are the trends,
Mm.
and creating snacks that were authentic and true to that creative process within a brewery or a winery. Um, we found ourselves also within that business model, um, really dedicating ourselves to the authentic process, really looking for market validation, for creating for us within a niche where there was no leader or predecessor doing what we were doing. So we were looking to really hit that vein of authenticity. And so we also, in our business model, were attending um, wine festivals, brewing festivals, anything that was affiliated with those industries up and down the East Coast. And just before COVID, we were in 26 states, had on schedule 75 wine or beer festivals.
Mm.
So we really hit the bricks hard. It was a great time for us to forge some great relationships. We had really, we felt, hit our stride. The message was out there. We had, great following on our e-com. We were seeing, retail sales as well as wholesale sales. And then, I think for us, a great validation is when one of your retail partners comes to you and says, hey, we love what you're doing and we want to really tap into that expertise a little bit more. So we found ourselves with a burgeoning private label
Oh,
opportunities. So
great.
working with some larger breweries to kind of take what they were doing and then taking it to the next level with marketing and merch and help them, kind of fine tune what they were doing. So 2020 for us pre-COVID was, I mean, we were rocking and rolling. It was ready to go. So again, we just kind of identified all the genres in craft beer and wine and created snacks that match those
Yeah.
or run opposite of those to create a pairing tension and a pairing opportunity to make everything that you like to drink that much better.
Amazing. And so tell us about the pivot. So
Sure.
what really brought you to a place where you realized, okay, we're going to have to move in a different direction.
With everybody, COVID, all of our, hard won, really strong relationships really just came, the curtain just closed. Breweries closed, bottle shops closed, wineries closed, distilleries closed,
Mhm.
ancillary boutiques that we were working with, those closed. And so, part of that survivor mentality, self-preservation, and then I guess, going back to some of the training that we received with Launch Greensboro and Launch Lab is, identifying your customer. Well, if I can't get my product to a customer who buys my product in a brewery, well, where can they buy me? So we had the really unique opportunity, and I call it, it's serendipitous for us. It gave us an opportunity to get off the hamster wheel with one of the business models, which was being on the road 24/7
Mm.
at festivals and things like that. We had the immense opportunity to work with somebody we would have never been able to afford or even had access to in a graphic designer, an amazing talent out of the West Coast. who had handled some redesigns for some brands that we really respected. So COVID gave us an opportunity to kind of put some things under the microscope, redefine, but then diversify. So for our pivot, we had to go back and say, all right, our customer could find us where? Well, what's still open? Grocery stores. And it really gave us, and mass retail. So it gave us an opportunity to put some things under the microscope, to get really, really lean. Previous to COVID, we had 12 SKUs, some snack mixes, some pretzel things. And so what we did is really just dug into the numbers, learned where our strengths were. And by virtue of COVID, it gave us an opportunity to establish some relationships finally with a great co-manufacturer, a great co-packer, packaging design, because everything had just kind of come to a halt.
Sure.
Where a lot of people were saying no, we were saying yes. What can we do? How can we go? How can we redesign this? So it gave us a unique opportunity that we're really pleased with it. And so what we did is spun Hops and Nuts and created a separate brand. We felt like there was an opportunity. We lost 90% of our revenue with COVID, with Hops and Nuts. And so we felt like we would be able to recapture probably 40% of that when the dust settled and everything else happened. So we wanted to remain true and leave Hops and Nuts intact for the folks who had been our brand partners for years.
Right.
So SIPPIN Snacks is an evolution of that fine tuning. I didn't have the luxury of being at a festival, so I could talk my way through what this product was and what it was supposed to do. And so we had to really be super hyper focused on message, on packaging, and what our goal was with the consumer.
And so how did you, so in that time period when you're both, leaving the business intact because you have, loyal partners that you want to stay in business with, but then you're also launching a new endeavor, how did you communicate that to both like your customers or partners that knew you for Hops and Nuts? How did you message that?
Right. It was really important to have great conversations with our wholesale partners to let them know that, whenever they came up for air, we'd still be there. And we put in place a pretty aggressive program to help them along with that. So we did a lot of, hand holding and how can we help you, with curbside service, what are some things that we can help do for you to, give the product legs when somebody's not sitting in a tap room. So there was a lot of focus on marketing and design to help with those things. And I think for us, it was important to leave those relationships intact. Now, for SIPPIN Snacks, we felt like there was an entirely different. We'd gone from a one-dimensional channel, and then we kind of were doing the e-commerce thing, so we became omni. It gave us two more channels that we had never even focused on. So there was a lot of new customer discovery. I tell people it was kind of like being in the 7th grade and being 16 years old. Like you've seen some of the homework before. You've taken some of the tests before.
Yes.
You have some insight as to a few of the inner workings, but once we got into mass retail and grocery, it's a completely different ball game as far as working with distribution, working with brokers, and the scale of it was certainly, its own learning curve. So devising an absolutely new way to communicate with customers that we had never had access before. So communication at all points was hypercritical for us.
Yeah. When I think about, I want to ask you a question, just if what your advice would be to those that are in business that feel like they need to make a pivot. And as I've heard you talk about your experience, the things that keep coming up are self-preservation, and it sounds like transparency and communication have been like, some two things that have really served you well. But if you had to give someone some advice about approaching a pivot or how to make one, what would your advice be?
Right. I think the word that comes to mind is fluid.
Mm,
You can't run from numbers. You can't run from whatever that the business that you're going through, the experience of it is. But you have to be fluid. I was a college athlete, and being agile and being fluid is, I think, the key to anything. Just surveying, understanding the situation, but being realistic. I mean, when you have to look at your numbers and why you're doing a pivot, it has to be a place that gets you to a better spot.
mm.
You have to really hone in on your footwork. You have to really understand and have a really hard grasp on what you do well, and be willing to, we're all, these are all our babies, and I know we've all gone through training, and that you can't treat it like it's your kid. You got to let go of it. You got to let it run on its own. You got to let it grow on its own. So you have to have some thick skin. You got to let some things go, but you've got to be fluid. You got to be agile, and you have to be responsive to whatever comes down the pike, for sure.
So true. That's great advice. I think we as humans get really attached to outcomes. And then when it comes to our business and to your point, our babies, it's like we have already decided what we want that to be. And so I think it's such great advice to, your business is going to grow and illuminate things to you probably that you never anticipated. And maybe even things that weren't in your original passion set or idea set, and being open to that and fluid, I think, is such a key part of it. And I think it does also touch back on what Ciandress said, where, sometimes it chooses you, and the way it's going to go is it comes to you, not the other way around. So I think it's really important that we remember that we hold our fists so tightly, and we're so, we're clutching to an outcome. And often in doing that, you miss an opportunity to pivot into something that could be even greater. So that's really great advice. So Alisha, you are the last but not least, certainly. Give us a little background on you, please.
Yeah, so I spent a decade in the insurance industry outside when I got out of college. And it was one of those things where I kind of fell into it because I really needed a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I was ever actually supposed to be there. So I spent a lot of time seeking after that. What am I supposed to be doing? How am I supposed to figure this out? And I started down the rabbit hole of yoga, and ended up, even though I wasn't supposed to be in that sales job I ended up in, I did very well in that role. And so I ended up opening a yoga studio while working my full-time job, which I do not recommend. But I opened this yoga studio because I thought, I'm a good yoga teacher. This will be fun. Maybe I'll make enough where I can quit that full-time job. And, I did a lot of great things. Like I built community, and I learned a lot, but it was certainly not sustainable. And instead of being something where I could quit my job and do full-time, I ended up pouring money and time and energy and resources into a business that was really not working. And I like to call things what they were. I would consider that a failure. I didn't hit my goal. That's what my whole book is about. And so as that business was coming to an end, I knew, okay, well, I've got to do something different. I can't stay in this insurance job, and I'm not sure what that will be. I had worked with a lot of coaches over the years, and I'd learned a lot. And I thought and honestly, my college background was psychology. I'm very touchy-feely. I'm very about emotions and feelings, and let's go deep and take deep dives. And so I thought, I think I have a pretty good system that could be useful for people. I'm going to just put it out there that people can work with me as a coach. And at the time I had no formal coach training, just I had worked with coaches with a background in psychology. And someone took me up immediately on that offer. And it was one of those moments where it feels like God is shining down on you and saying, like, this is the thing you're supposed to be doing. And so I started just pouring all of my energy into thinking, if I'm going to build another business, how do I do it in a sustainable way? How do I do it in a way where I'm not going to end up with the same outcome as the yoga studio? So at the time, I had gone through Launch Greensboro midway through the yoga studio, and that was a very long time ago at this point. And that was so helpful. I learned so much. And one thing I'll also say is that failing at that yoga studio was actually really empowering, because it taught me that my worst case scenario could happen and I would be fine.
Yes.
And I could pick myself back up and I could figure it out. And I'm intelligent, I'm hardworking. And if there's something in my heart to do, I should probably just try it. And what makes me feel so good about what happened with the yoga studio is I don't have to live in regret about what if. I poured everything into that, and I never have to think about, well, what if I tried this?
Sure.
What if I tried that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's such an important point, because I feel like, we still, even as much as we're told not to, I think we still are so terrified to fail. And I think, embracing that as the only way that you can learn things, and I used to joke that I feel like I learned everything the hard way through like a series of failures, but I wouldn't change it, because to your point, it is very much like the thing that you can feel very resolved about is that you gave it a shot and you learn things about yourself. And resiliency, I think, is one of those things that you sort of prove it to yourself each time that, like, oh, even if that didn't work out, I'm a capable human being. Like that wasn't the end game. That wasn't my one shot. So I love that. So then tell me, so as God was shining down on you in your moment of coaching, how did that evolve into what you're doing now? And can you tell us more about what you're doing now?
Yeah. So, all around that time when I was feeling very, very burnt out, I think it was around January 2017, I took myself on this solo retreat. I remember very distinctly, it was MLK weekend, and I took myself to Wrightsville Beach, and I thought, okay, I need to write out my personal core values. And I identified my core values like health and sovereignty, which I define as like freedom and mindfulness and growth and creativity. And I realized that in everything that I was doing, the insurance job, sales, as well as the yoga studio, I was really out of alignment with those core values. So I was not emotionally healthy at that time, because I didn't have time to feed any relationships outside of work or the business. I, was not physically healthy other than that I was doing yoga. I wasn't eating enough because I was working so much. And I didn't have any freedom, of course. And that's a huge core value. I spent my day tied to a desk, making phone calls, dialing for dollars all day. And then in my quote unquote spare time, I was teaching yoga classes or writing newsletters for the studio, paying other yoga teachers. And so I thought, okay, whatever I do next has to be in alignment with these core values. That is the most important thing to me. So I knew that if I was going to build a business around coaching, it had to fit into my lifestyle, not the other way around. Yeah. So I had to decide what that lifestyle was that I wanted to do. So I sent out, I did a positive psychology certification program so that I would have research backed, we call them interventions, that I could use with clients to move them forward through transitions. And so I started working on that. I quit my full-time job and decided to go into this. Like, I don't want to divide my time and my energy. I want to be very focused and intentional. And so I started doing, this might be interesting actually to the listeners. I first interviewed about 25 different people. So I said, okay, have you ever worked with a coach before? What was that experience like? Why did you work with a coach? What do you hope to get out of that experience? What would you pay to work with a coach? And then I had a package already kind of set up. And then out of those interviews, I said, well, I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for all of this information. And as a thank you, if you decide that you want to move forward with me in coaching, I'll give you 10% off of these packages. And 90% of the people I interviewed took me up on the offer. So I knew that the business idea I had was viable if I could continue to hit that target market. So I did a lot of research before I officially leaped into the coaching business.
Yeah, and that's something that all three of you have touched on, that like we've said, I think that's so important. And often in our excitement and drive as entrepreneurs, we sometimes leave that right out. We just get going and don't even think about that. So that's really a great lesson for sure. So how can we stay in touch with you, know more about you, support you?
Yeah, so my website is www.yoke, Y-O-K-E, and abundance.com. Okay. And I'm also on Facebook, Yoke and Abundance, and at Yoke and Abundance on Instagram.
Amazing. And I just realized that, Melissa, I didn't give you that opportunity. And so I want to make sure that I don't miss that. So I'm circling back to you to tell me and all of us how we can find you and support you ongoing.
Absolutely. So we've got our retail website is SIPPIN SNAX, and that's SIPPIN SNAX, SNAX.com. And on a local note, you can, happy to announce, we just got into Lowe's Foods.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so Carolina's Lowe's Foods, and so you can find us in the local section.
Awesome.
And then they're going to be spreading us to the Beer Den shortly after that. And then we are launching into Publix, Carolinas region, so North and South Carolina, and that will be the end of September. In Greensboro here right now, you can find us at Lowe's Foods, New Garden, and Guilford College, and then Deep Roots Market also carries us. So amazing. If you can't find us locally, you can definitely get us online. And then we make snacks for great gifts. So ship them out for the holidays. Happy to handle it.
I love it. I love it. Well, we have hit our time, but I have so many more things I feel like we could talk about. So if anyone has any questions or wants to talk more about pivots, or just wants to connect with these amazing people, please reach out, because that's why we do this, absolutely, to connect people. And just to circle back to Launch Greensboro, you can apply for our programs. We have programs year round. You can read more about them on launchgreensboro.com. Our next launch camp, which is a weekend, essentially a boot camp to help identify, it's very, very timely considering this conversation, helps you identify and define your ideal customer and evaluate your business's feasibility. So often in that boot camp, we see pivots happen in real time, but certainly encourage you, if you're interested, to register for that. That's October 8th and 9th. And then, as always, follow us on social, stay in touch. We're at Launch Greensboro on Instagram and LinkedIn, at Launch GSO on Twitter, and at Greensboro Entrepreneur on Facebook. I just want to say thank you to the three of you. I get so inspired when I have these conversations, and I always get the flag down to cut these off, because I get so involved and really so inspired by you. So thank you so much for your time, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Make sure to subscribe so you get new episodes delivered to your device each week. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at GSO Chamber. See you next time.